Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Getting ready to roll in 3.
Wait, I didn't clap or say my name.
Not needed.
Say my name, say my name.
Abigail. We're here at The Connected Life, and we are wrangling cats yet again. In the background, you'll hear Abby and her good friend Pietze. They are uncontrollable. And Jonny and I are just doing our business, trying to control the uncontrollable. Listen to all you men out there. It's not possible. Just let it be.
This episode is about how to control your wife. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah,
I think that's what we're talking about.
Can't be done.
Yeah, you are sleeping on the couch tonight, both of you.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun day today. A fun episode.
Woo woo.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun because we're gonna get deep into the details.
Oh, we're getting deep.
Into the details of Pietze and Jonny's sex life. Now, we promised you before some sex talk, and we didn't deliver on it.
No.
But
No.
And we did not want to leave you with blue balls.
that's a weird way to put
Very
it.
descriptive.
That's allegorical.
We didn't want to
saying.
cock block you.
We didn't want you to feel teased.
Okay. See,
We didn't want to work you up, but leave you hanging.
This is going the wrong direction
I
already.
just thought of one really dirty one. I'm not going to say it.
there's
Can I say
there's
something?
a train and it derailed before it got to the station.
How come I'm the only one making sexual innuendos? I know that you guys are all dirty too.
Yeah,
I made some.
I had a long day, Abby. I'm very tired. No, I want to say,
The
can I
more
just say
tired I
one
am, the
thing?
more sexual innuendos I make.
I just need to say something, a specific shout out to a couple people.
Okay.
If Pietze's dad or any of her brothers or her mom or either of my parents, for that matter, are listening, you know who you are, and I strongly advise you to
Not
maybe
to
go listen to a
Turn
different
and run.
episode.
Run far away.
You don't
Turn
want
and run.
You do not want to
listen.
hear.
Stop, drop, and roll.
You don't want to hear this episode. Trust me. It's for your own good.
Wait,
Yeah.
can I share? I have to share something just
Okay.
really quick.
Is it
Speaking of my dad.
Is it about you guys burning loins, or is no? It's
It's confusing for you to say that after she said
well,
it's about
the
my
sentence
dad.
started coming out, and then
Yeah,
midway she's like, "It's about my
don't.
dad." I'm like, well,
Oops.
nope,
No,
it's not
it's-
about that.
It's about Abby basically giving me the most worst moment of my life. Most worst moment.
Please tell this story.
Oh my gosh. We were it was a time when I was visiting Abby and we went, my family loves In-N-Out. We're like LA natives. It's like a big deal to my family.
Yes.
So I texted Jonny and my dad. Abby and I were shopping and I texted Jonny and my dad. I was like, hey, with Abby, we just got In-N-Out. Ha ha.
Oh gosh, I forgot about this.
And Jonny texts my phone back and goes, you suck. And Abby grabs my phone, not knowing that my dad is part of this text, and goes, Pietze sucks and you love it. And
Oh gosh.
and this was like, I was like a
Wait, you were
newlywed
like
still.
20
This
or
was a
19
while
or
ago.
something.
Yeah,
You
this
were
was a
like,
while
I
ago.
was like a
It
newlywed.
was
So like my
right when you
parents
got
were
married.
still getting used to like the fact
fact that you were
that I
having
was
sex.
married
Yep.
and that was like a regular part of my life that I
Yes.
did not discuss with them, by the way, at all. And so
And Abby
Pietze
was
sucks
just
and
getting
you
used
like
to
it.
the fact that group texts are a thing that you have to be careful about.
but yeah, the iPhone had just come out.
It
So
had
we'll,
just come
we'll
out.
give you some grace, but I was pissed at her in the moment. She's like, look what I texted to Jonny. And I was like, Abby, my dad is on that text. And so I grab my phone and I call my mom and I'm like, Mom, I need you right now to drop what you're doing and go find dad's phone. You have to delete a text for me. And it's like dead silent. And she goes, he already saw it. And I was like, oh my God. And she's like, and he's not happy.
And I was like, we were in the mall when that happened.
Oh yeah, we were in the mall, and I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And I just like hung up the phone, and I was like, oh my gosh. And you thought it was, Abby was like laughing so hard. I was like, you bitch.
Like, you have sex. You're married. Of course, this is like, obviously, you're married.
And just we hadn't broken the ice in that.
Yeah, you guys hadn't talked about
I get
it yet.
The first conversation, like you hadn't had that first conversation of like, hey dad, guess what? We were trying out the reverse cowgirl the other night. It was so fun. Johnny loves it.
Yeah, we hadn't bridged that one yet.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, gosh.
I can imagine how that would make that conversation awkward.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
If my dad was listening to this, he would die 1,000 deaths.
Okay, well, we're actually going to share in this podcast, Pietze and Jonny are going to talk about their journey of learning how to emotionally be safe with each other and how that impacted their sex life. But before we do that, I thought we'd just ask a couple rounds of questions about sex. So let's start with, what is one thing that you were afraid of before having sex?
Oh my gosh, that's like a really good question.
I think you were afraid of my penis.
I kind of was. Here's
terrifying.
the truth. We were both virgins when we got married. So like we were each other's first. So, and I was like kind of innocent in the way that like.
Yeah, you
Yeah, it was
never
pretty
dated
innocent.
anyone else.
No, I didn't really date anyone else. I was like pretty innocent. So I was like definitely kind of afraid of his penis and to look at it.
That's
like
funny.
I like kind of didn't want to look at it. Like it was too much for me, like too much too soon. I was like, just put it in. I don't need to see what it looks like.
That's funny.
Like
That's
just
wild.
do that thing.
We had a friend that believed penises were slimy.
Yes.
It was just a very wrong belief
Gross.
system based on
I
seeing
think that it was
dogs'
a dog
wieners.
penis that like
Oh,
informed
yeah,
their
that's
view.
Right. So like I guess penises are all like that.
She was terrified of marriage because she
Oh,
did
gosh,
not want a
that-
slimy penis in
Who
her.
wants a slimy penis? Like, oh my gosh.
wouldn't want a
that's-
slimy penis in me.
practically, it would probably help. at
Actually, it
times.
practically would be very helpful now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, that's very
Yeah.
true.
Okay, so you were scared of Johnny's genitals.
Yeah.
I wasn't scared of anything. I don't think.
Johnny,
I was ready to
he
go.
was wrapped and ready to. He was loaded and ready to go.
Yeah.
I was
You're
an
like running
18-year-old
for home
boy.
base,
I
ready
had
to
no
slide
fear.
right in there.
I was ready. I was ready to rock.
Yeah.
I think I had so much fear, like performance fear of like, is he going to like my body? Is like this going to be what he expected? Is he going to feel sad about this? Like, does he, am I going to be good at this? I think I thought I was very self-conscious about everything around sex. I remember
that makes sense.
I was so scared. I think we've told this story before, but we on our honeymoon played some kind of card game and we bet sexual favors and I lost. So I was like, had to dress up in lingerie and do something sexual to him. And so I went into the bathroom and put the lingerie on and I like waddled out with like the most awkward facial expression, body position. I like waddled out and just stood there like straight. My arms were straight down. There's no sexiness happening because I felt so self-conscious being in lingerie because I felt like, oh my gosh, you can tell that I'm not sexy. Like you can, like when you're trying to be sexy, you can tell that you're not. That's what I thought. So I was just like, I got
So
nothing
you went
else.
the opposite direction. You went as unsexy as possible.
I wasn't trying to be unsexy. I just could not I think some people lean into acting as a way to hide.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was me.
Acting,
Totally.
That's you. For
That
me,
was me. Yeah.
acting is more vulnerable. Like, so I waddled out and was like, this is all I got. And I just stood there with my arms like straight, like by my sides. And then Justin was like, and I was like, you got to do the rest. So he had to like come kiss me and then like help me be a little less
Loosen up.
rigid. Mhm.
Yeah. And I didn't think anything negative of it. I was like, yeah, it's like she's being really brave. And
Yeah.
So
Oh my gosh.
You were so
can I say
tender.
this, Justin? I just want to say for a second, I feel like Abby couldn't have married someone better in like this area.
Arena. Yeah.
Because you made it so safe for her.
Yeah.
Because that was really a struggle.
Yeah.
Like,
I was
feeling like,
terrified.
yeah. And like Justin never like made fun of you
No.
or laughed or like made it like, what the heck is wrong? Like he was so safe and like so loving and so covering and so caring.
Mhm.
I was like blown away by his like capacity to like meet you where you were and like love you into love.
Yeah.
Making.
Into sexuality. Yeah. I mean, what was kind of your mindset? Because you were strategic in that.
Well, I just looked at the ideas that if we're going to have a long-term sex life, you're going to have to put in the effort up front to create safety and connection that's necessary to learn and to grow. I mean, it's a vulnerable thing as it is. I had a handful of sexual encounters prior to being married, but it wasn't like I came into it being like, hey, I'm a pro at this. And I'd always wanted to feel safe inside of sexuality. I mean, it's even some of the reasons I didn't sleep around is because I was like, it's felt so vulnerable. And it's something that I vulnerably, like, in it was like, I don't want to just expose myself with someone who's just judging me. And so
On a performance
level. And so there was no part of me that wanted to engage in judging you. I was just like, yeah, I'm going to need grace too in the exploration process.
I think you also really had long-term vision. I think you're like, if I'm safe, you weren't scared that I would never open up.
No.
You weren't scared that I would never be the woman you wanted. You were like, oh, if I love her well, she'll bloom.
Yeah. And I've, obviously in doing what we've done for years, I've heard so many stories where people have terrible sex lives. All because of the first year of marriage.
Oh, I know.
Just went with, there was so many demands, expectations from both sides,
or messy moments where things just missed.
And stuff like that. And I, there's a part of me that looks at it and goes, man, I was really lucky that I had that foresight because I could have been anyone else.
Yeah.
Even a lot of times I think that people in their own insecurity, like a man could project in their own security, a kind of a demeaning thing and a demand thing to someone else because they're feeling insecure about they don't know how to show up.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just didn't have any ego in it. I was like, this isn't about whether or not I'm good or bad at something. This is about growing and developing together.
Yeah. You really didn't have shame in the area of sexuality.
No.
It really was like, no, we're just going to learn together and we're going to be vulnerable together. And you celebrated every step of vulnerability without because you didn't really bring fear. You didn't have fear that we wouldn't have a good sex life.
No, I didn't have that.
And so you weren't always like scared in how it went. You were scared a little bit because I demanded sex so much, but besides that, you weren't.
You got pretty aggressive.
That's funny.
Justin,
Is that true?
Yeah, he felt traumatized by how much I wanted sex.
Yeah, I 100%
After three
believe
times a
that
day,
about you.
After 3 times a day, every day.
Yeah, 3 times a day is my limit.
That's a lot.
That's
Justin's
my
like,
limit.
I'm trapped. I can't get out.
Justin literally was like, my penis is raw. Please stop.
I mean, it
Oh my
wasn't
gosh.
these
Yes,
two.
we
It wasn't
had
these
That
2 minute
definitely happened on
interludes.
our honeymoon.
Yeah, it's definitely not a
What?
2-minute interlude. It's like that was 35 minutes. That was
Totally.
took a toll on me.
Justin's like,
But
toll
also,
on me.
especially in our first,
toll on me.
especially in our first year of marriage, maybe our first like 4 months, I barely moved. It's like my body hadn't figured out
Oh
sex
no,
yet.
I was doing all the work. I was dripping in sweat. I don't think I've sweat in the last like 5 years.
during sex.
or more. That first year, I lost so much weight in sex.
I remember like a couple months in telling one of my friends, like, what am I supposed to do? And she's like, during sex? I'm like, yeah. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, oh, okay, I guess I should just be doing it, huh? She's like, your bodies should be moving. I was like,
Oh, okay. I love for you. It wasn't like, I'm afraid to do something. For you, I was like, I got to figure out like how to move my body during sex.
Well, in all fairness, that was just true about everything. I wasn't very coordinated at much.
That's what I'm saying. You're my favorite person in the world. I love it.
But
Okay,
I do want to say, with all of my humble beginnings, I've been a great sex partner.
You have been a fantastic sex
Like,
partner.
I figured it out. I can move just fine.
If Pietze's dad, Doug, is listening, who is also a spiritual father to you, Doug, Abby's done very well in the bedroom.
If he's
Justin!
You were
listening,
wondering.
Justin!
if he's listening right now, it's his own fault.
Totally.
We warned
That's
him.
my point. Doug, if you've gotten this far in, it's your own fault.
It's sheer torture. Okay,
will
I
say-
have. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's funny because we all sit around here and joke about, our crazy sex in the early days, but I think it's been really hitting me on a very profound level lately how rare that is. Like how few people actually have a satisfying sex life. Like I've had a lot of, that's one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about this tonight as well, is because it's like, I think particularly in the church, we come into marriage with these big expectations.
Huge expectations.
But no roadmap of how to get there, and then
No.
inevitably
And no
it falls short
practical
of
details, no
No
practical
practical-
place to talk about it, learn, grow, ask questions.
And
Yeah.
really the only things that are given to us, at least for most of us in our generation, was that if you find the right person and if you stay pure,
It
And you
will
don't
work
have
out.
sex before you're
you
married.
will have a great
You're gonna
sex
have a
life
great sex
and you'll be
life.
fine.
Yeah.
And that's just
It's just
not the
bullshit.
case
No,
for most
it
people.
doesn't work that way.
And then
Yeah.
people get disillusioned with God, get disillusioned with their partner, feel like they married
It
the wrong
creates-
person,
Creates
Yeah.
emotional separation in other
Yeah.
areas of their marriage.
decide that they should just be sluts.
Yeah, it can go any direction.
Okay, can I just ask one more question? Then I
Yes.
promise we
Yeah.
can move
No,
on.
that's great.
Okay, this is my icebreaker question.
Okay.
Oh, we're still doing icebreakers. Sorry,
Yeah,
I
I
took
just
it
want-
serious too
I know,
soon.
you
I'm
took it too
sorry. I'm
serious.
sorry. I'm sorry.
I have one more. Like now we're gonna bring it back up. Okay.
16 minutes in. we're
Sorry,
almost there.
I need this.
Great.
Okay. What is the craziest place you guys have had sex?
Don't answer that.
Oh,
Don't.
I want to know now. I
No,
probably already
not
know
that
because
one.
Abby and I always talk about what.
No,
happened.
I don't know. The one I'm thinking of, I'm just hoping she's not thinking of, and I don't want her to say it because that one's not one that's
I
going to come
know
out.
what you're thinking of. You don't
Oh
want me
my
to
gosh,
say
you
No,
it?
guys have
that
to
one will
share
not go
it.
out on the podcast.
No, you guys have to share. Come on,
Okay,
you
how
guys.
about I share
I have
ours?
a bad one. No,
Okay.
I have one that is bad.
Okay, share it.
Bad.
Okay.
Okay, craziest place we have ever had sex. I don't know if you're gonna say this one.
We've had a couple crazy ones.
A prayer room at a church.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
No. A prayer room at a church. My band was on tour and we were going to play. And we didn't have a hotel that night. So there's nowhere to have sex. We're like living out of a van.
We
We're
literally
basically
had to have
homeless.
sex wherever we could, whenever we could.
Yeah,
But the
because there's
doors-
five guys with you at all times.
We
You know, like-
were touring with 5 guys. Half the time we slept. We all slept in the same room. Like
Right.
it was not
Totally.
fun.
You know, like these prayer rooms at church, like at small churches that are like a prayer room / library
Yeah.
/ office is one of those kind of little places. But the door didn't have a lock on
Oh,
it.
God.
So we had to do it up against the door so that nobody would walk in on us.
Oh. Very good.
But
That's
There
innovative.
was like an altar set up with a picture of Jesus, and I was like,
I was just going to say, God was watching you.
I mean, basically, we had to do it doggy style on the door. So I couldn't see Jesus. It was too much.
I love how much details we've given. I now fully visualize this scenario.
Oh, sorry, guys.
No, I love it. I'm saying it's fun.
What do we do,
I'm
huh?
saying sorry to the listeners. Okay, Johnny,
No, I
go
love
ahead.
Go ahead with what?
Was that the same one you were going to say?
Yeah, that was the same one I was going to say.
We
But I mean,
also
there's
had
been lots
sex-
of ones.
Yeah, we also had
over the
sex on a
years.
dock, and Johnny's allergic to mosquitoes.
Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
yeah.
And he got literally
No,
torn
butt
to
bites.
shreds.
Butt bites.
Oh, it was
No.
bad.
It was like ball bites. It was horrible.
No.
They were like
Oh.
ginormous.
Yeah, we went skinny dipping and then decided to have sex on a dock. Not a good idea. Don't do
Oh
it.
my gosh.
Okay, Justin and
We had
Abby.
sex. One time we had sex in our tour van.
This is impressive, I feel.
Oh.
This is
one
okay,
thing.
but nobody was in there. We had just got home from tour and we were
Oh.
having sex like in the back bunk.
Uh-huh.
But then my brother came out and like opened the front door of the van and he's like, "Are you guys in there?" And we were just like quiet, like and waited for him to go away.
And then did you leave?
Yeah,
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
We ran off in the middle of a party at one of our friends' houses while everyone was there. And
that wasn't a crazy though. That was just like sneaking during the party.
Yeah, but that's pretty crazy. Did you guys go to the bathroom?
Yeah. In there.
And then what we did is we timed, like we came out at different times. Then I was like, has anybody seen Justin? And they're like, no.
Ooh,
and I was like,
classic.
weird.
That's smart.
Good
We
move.
misled
Good
the
move.
crew. Yeah. I would say one of the craziest places. We have a mountain here that everybody goes on hikes. It's called Castle Crags.
Oh, yeah.
And
I bet everyone who is local just loves this story now.
Yeah.
This is a great
So
one.
you hike
It's
up.
a beautiful view, let me tell you.
It is. It is a beautiful view. But so we hiked up, and then we found this little like rock formation that I bent behind, but you could literally see people walking up from where we were at.
You could if they were not walking up.
Okay.
You
Okay.
could
So
see
you
it.
had
It
an
was-
eye on the trail.
Yeah, you had an
We
eye on
kept
the
our
trail
eye
from
on the
where we were
trail.
at, but it was majestic.
It was public.
That sounds like the most epic sex. Like,
We were overlooking like the we were at the top, so we were looking
Yeah.
down at the so it's cool.
Yeah, there's been some
That's,
good
like,
outdoor
epic.
sex is always
Oh,
fantastic.
we've had incredible outdoor
Had sex over by the
Often-
Hollywood sign. That was cool.
We did.
really?
Yeah, at the old house in the hills, out in the outside by the pool,
Oh, yeah.
overlooking
yeah.
LA. That was
Yeah. We that was.
was
That sounds
legit.
magical.
We lived with 6 guys, so it felt like we just had sex outside, but like just where we had to look out to see when the cars would drive up, so that if somebody
we were alone.
came
It
home,
was great.
because you know
Same.
6 guys, you never know when somebody's coming
yeah,
back.
somebody's gonna come
Yeah.
back.
100%.
Don't you miss being young? Man, I miss being young.
Wait, we
No, it's
also
like the kids are asleep. Quick, we've got 20
Yeah,
minutes.
it's like the kids are in the other room watching a show. A quickie, like make it 2 minutes. No foreplay. No, don't do it. Quick.
This episode is for all parents, really.
we,
as
we
well.
have to get it done before Dino Ranch is
Ends. We have,
because
like,
once
exactly
it's over,
16
Moses
minutes.
will be up here and it's all over.
I think that's got to change the game so
one
much.
time we walked in on Pietze. I walked in on Pietze and Jonny having
No.
sex.
Yeah, you.
Really?
Yeah,
That was That was a
that-
devastating
It was
day.
like last year.
No, that was a
it
couple of
was
years
like-
ago.
Why
It
don't
was
I
like a-
remember that?
No, because you were nailing me. That's why you don't remember. You were like in it, and
The
we're
blood
like
flow
having
was
sex.
gone from your brain.
I mean, let's be honest. Like when Abby and I are around each other, we just revert back to being
There
sisters.
are no boundaries. There are
So
no
like we
boundaries
just walk in
between
each other's
Pietze and
bedroom.
Abby.
I crawl in bed with Justin and Abby, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Hi guys,
Aw.
don't you love me?" And
Yes.
Justin's like, "Get the frick out of our bed." But anyway, so Abby walked. It was late at night, and we were doing it. And Abby walks in, and I was like, "What the?" she ran downstairs and she's like, "Oh my gosh!" She texted me, "Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! I'm so sorry." I was like, "Yeah."
I
I
remember.
saw more of Pietze than I saw of
You're
Jonny,
yelling.
so it didn't feel.
Well, that's a shame.
I know. I saw her boobs for sure, but I've seen them
How
before.
did they look?
They looked good.
Okay, good.
I thought
we
Johnny's got a good prize going on.
Here's a question.
Are we
Now
gonna
that
talk
everyone
about-
knows about all of our sex lives, do you have anything that you want to like give as
I
like?
don't think I need to add anything.
That's the end of the episode.
Well, everybody from the Connected Life, I hope you've enjoyed this and got a good visual representation of our sex lives. And
Okay, well, I know I'll segue. So earlier I talked about how I couldn't act sexy. It was a lot of work for me to learn how to be sexual because I couldn't like just watch a TV show and then try to pretend to be like that. It didn't work for me.
Yeah.
But Pietze's personality was very different than mine. She was a natural performer. She could sing, dance, joke, like be in front of people.
Joke.
As we've
That's
seen
perfect.
over the last 20 minutes.
Yeah. She was very good in front of people. So when she got married, sex could become more performancy than it was for me.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, and I mean we probably some people have heard us talk about this before because we've done episodes about sex, but definitely like, after getting married, I think I knew how to act sexy, but I didn't know how to be sexy. Like I didn't know how to be in my body. And I will say like and it really caused problems. Like, there was like a season where I would like put on lingerie and like completely leave the building.
Yes.
Oh,
because it was almost like when I put on lingerie, I felt like I was performing. So I wasn't showing up vulnerably,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I mean, I have to give it to Jonny because I would be like, hey, I think I need to like not wear, like, I think I need to not wear lingerie. And he'd be like, totally, I get it. I'd rather you be in it.
Yeah.
And I'll say like one thing that was super helpful is Abby and I growing up had a woman that was in our life, like a mentor, and she talked a lot to us about sex.
Yeah.
And she had an awesome sex life. And she
Mhm.
just would share about her sex life. And we were older teenagers or early 20s.
Yeah.
And I think for both of us, it made an impression because I don't think either one of us went into sex with religion.
Yeah.
So like neither one, you or I, had experience. Like
No.
we were both quite innocent going into marriage, especially me. And you know, I think something that was super helpful was just the fact that like there was no religion. So I felt open to like, oh, like I want to explore this.
Yeah.
You know? And so we did have like really good, we had awesome sex. Like most of those times that happened, you know, when we were first married. But there was a level to which I always struggled to really connect in sex and to really completely show up and really let my walls down. And I don't think I knew that. I think I just had learned how to like work with it. Like I could never like have an orgasm from just having sex.
Right.
And I mean, luckily Jonny's so awesome that he was always committed to making sure that I would have one. But it was like I would shut off because I didn't know how to fully be in my body. You know, I didn't know how to like fully show up. And I think part of it was me like going into performance or my mind would wander. So we would do crazy things, but like I would serve him sexually in bed. And I liked doing that for him, but that did not, like, I basically would be shut off while I was doing it, you know?
Jonny,
Well,
how
I
did that
think
affect
that-
you? Or go ahead.
I think that the thing about sex in a committed relationship is that your life never stays the same.
Yeah.
You know, so like you can have good sex early on and then you have kids or like things change. And I think, you know, we did have good sex early on. Like it was better than most, I would say, from like the people that I've heard stories. Like most people don't have sex 3 times on their wedding night.
Yeah.
You know, like most people are lucky if they get it done once.
Right.
You know, and so there's an element of that I'm really thankful for. But at the same time, on some level, I feel like it kind of happened accidentally. You know what I mean? Like we hadn't like actually figured out how to take care of each other in that way. I think just the circumstances worked out that we had good sex early on.
Yeah.
But then as life went on, like it got harder and things got, you know.
Well, and I think one thing that you've said before is like when I would do things for you, but you could tell that I wasn't fully in it, you like, you know, you would push the limits sexually with us. And I would like, I didn't shame spiral or anything like that, but then you would feel guilty afterwards because you could tell that I wasn't fully there.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a big difference between being satisfied sexually and feeling loved and bonded to the other person in a sexual experience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You
Like
can
you
get
can
away
be
and be like, oh, that was great sex. I didn't necessarily feel more bonded.
right.
Yeah.
You could have a one night stand.
Yeah.
And have a good, you know what I mean? You could have,
You can have a
a
good physical
satisfying
experience.
sexual experience. And so I think early on, at least for me, sex was very satisfying, but I didn't feel loved by Pietze in it.
Through her act of like, oh, I'm just going to give away. I'm just going to perform for Jonny. And Johnny's like, that doesn't necessarily make me feel loved. But
Because of my own dysfunction, honestly.
Mm.
Because of my own being raised in the church and feeling guilty and feeling weird. And
feeling guilty for the fact that it was for you and not for her. Or she wasn't there.
Or, you know, just the fact that we, you know, a lot of times we would have good sex, but we wouldn't necessarily be heart connected, or, you know, like it's just, there's just that difference. Like when you get the emotional connection where sex becomes not about the sex.
Right.
It becomes about your hearts connecting with each other.
So I got a question, unless you have something else to say there on that, Jonny.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I think for me, the thing, because I've obviously had to do a lot of reflecting on this area of our life leading up to this podcast. And I think the thing that really stands out to me is that when it comes to sex within committed relationships, so much of what happens is very accidental. You know, like early on for us, we had good sex, but it wasn't because we did a really good job of staying heart connected, or we did a really good job of, you know, loving each other in it. It's because the circumstances lined up, you know, as far as like our own mentalities and our own ability. But then as life kind of started creeping in, you start having kids and you start having financial problems. And, you know, all of these things, I started struggling with porn, which played such a huge role. And that's where the rubber really hits the road. I think for a lot of people, if it doesn't happen accidentally, you know, if it doesn't just magically happen and sex is good, then they don't know what to do. And I think on a lot of levels, we didn't know what to do either as life started setting in.
Yeah. I mean, definitely when I got pregnant, that was like a huge turning point in the wrong direction.
Because you were so sick.
We love you, Yana. We love you.
I was so sick. And then, you know, like you're sick. And then after you have a baby, you can't have sex for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Although I will say this is crazy. I don't know why I felt really connected to you the night that we brought Yana home. And I totally went down on him the night we got home from the
Oh, yeah. I
hospital.
forgot about that.
I felt
cute.
very connected to you.
Aww.
But anyways, you know, we didn't have sex. And then we were exhausted. I mean, like, obviously Yana was a difficult baby. We were just exhausted. You know, you're breastfeeding, your body's like a freaking milk factory.
Yeah.
And like, my body did not, I was overweight. Like my body did not feel sexual anymore. And I was exhausted. And I think that reflected. And around that same time is when you started, our relationship got really hard.
With porn a lot.
And you started looking at porn.
I was struggling with porn. And I mean, I know that this goes without saying, but I think that porn is obviously the worst thing that you can do for your sex life when it comes to like a committed relationship. And I definitely, you know, I remember one time when I was really struggling with porn, and I just didn't, you know, for those of you who do struggle with porn or any other addictive behavior, it can very much feel like it is trapping. Like you don't know, sometimes you're like on your face and you don't know how to get out of it. And I remember one night just praying to God and being like, God, I don't know how to get out of this, but I need you to help me love my wife more. Like not like the action of me giving her love, but I need to feel more love in my heart for her, because I knew that was the solution, that the solution wasn't just trying harder to have self-control or whatever.
Totally.
But I tell you what, when I stopped looking at porn, it changed so much for me, because for obvious reasons, your desire goes up, you know,
because you're not running off to the porn.
Your expectations go down.
Right.
And I think there is something biological to how God created us when it comes to monogamy, that we are kind of designed to desire the person because they are the person who fills our needs.
Totally.
Right.
You know, like it's a natural thing that like my
connection.
Yeah, my heart is tied to her because she loves me in this way and I can't get that anywhere else. But when you start giving yourself that same satisfaction but somewhere else, I think it creates separation, which then obviously, I mean, you could go scientific as well. Obviously, like erectile dysfunction and a lot of sex
and you
problems.
did struggle with attraction towards me.
Yeah,
during that time, didn't you?
Well, also we were massively unsafe. I thought you hated my guts for portions of that season. You know, not because you
I
were
was pregnant.
not because you were mean, but just because like there was
She
a
was
lot
mean.
of
While she was
unsafety
pregnant,
with us.
she
I was
mean.
mean. I was downright mean.
Yeah. And here's the interesting thing. I think this isn't talked about enough, that the way a woman relates emotionally affects men sexually. I think like it's been
absolutely.
talked about a lot.
Yes.
You know, the concept of the way that a man treats a woman. That feels like I've heard that before. Like, oh, if you're not emotionally connected, it's going to affect her desire for sexual, like to be sexual with you.
Right.
And there's a lot of things like, you know, like, my brain just stopped. There's a lot of content about that, but I think there's less about how men need safety as well for their sexuality.
I was just talking to a buddy the other night at a dinner, and he was like, yeah, like my sexuality totally shuts off when we're in a big fight and stuff like that, and I have to push to connect. And I think a lot of guys don't actually know it because of culture says like you're just a sexual being, and then they're like, I don't understand why I have ED. Like putting pornography to the side is not even being one of the things inside of it. Let's just say there's a lot of guys that end up finding themselves not sexually stimulated, and they're like, what's wrong with me? I should be able to do this. And it's like, you're probably not connected to your wife. There's probably unresolved issues where you don't feel safe with her. And so it doesn't feel appealing. It doesn't feel like a draw.
And it is a major thing in porn. I think most men think they just feel that pull towards porn.
Yeah.
They're not aware of what's going on inside of them. They're not aware that there is a heart thing connected to it.
Right.
Well, and I will say, I mean, it's interesting that you bring that up because we had referenced in one of our previous podcasts, there was a time where we got to really good emotional safety, and I had shared this dream that I had with Pietze. And I'm just going to share it here because why the heck not?
Great.
In that season when we were really struggling, I had like this really sexual dream where this other woman was giving me a hand job. And there was nothing sexy about her. She was just a very normal person. I don't even remember what she looks like. But I remember in the dream that she kept saying, hey, it's going to be okay. Like, like I want to do this for you because like you're such a good guy. And I can, like that kind of feeling. And I do think that there is something as a man. Obviously, it's easier for men to get off, just in general. Like biologically speaking, it's easier for us as a species.
Most of the time,
not all the time.
Yeah, there's definitely exceptions.
That's the generalization of it. But when it comes to emotional safety, there's something in us that shuts down when we feel like our partner just doesn't like us or doesn't care for, which is not, I'm not putting that on you in any way.
No, I don't.
But
feel
it's
like
that desire for somebody who loves you for who you are.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think everybody feels that way. I think women feel the same way. If they don't feel wanted for who they are, if they don't feel like their emotions matter and their dreams and if they're not feeling connected to you as a human, most people's sexuality shuts down.
Yeah.
That's why learning the skill of connection is so important. And most people don't think the two things are connected at all.
Right. Well, and I've noticed a huge difference, like since we've really like worked through all of our junk and had emotional safety, even how you show up, honey, because I can tell that there's a vulnerability that you've let me into that like you've never let me, like even in the way that like you let me take care of you and you feel
I never let anybody in like I have in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Which, just as a recap, if you're new to the podcast, Jonny, me and Pietze made a course called The Pathway to Freedom. This is the last week to sign up, although if you have a couple days later, a week or two late, you're fine. You can start late if you want. But
we might make an exception.
Yeah, we'll make an exception. But we run it once a year, so that's it. But it is a course learning how to connect to yourself, to your body, to your emotions, to understand what's going on inside of yourself. And Jonny edited that course, and through that process began connecting to himself, and that led Pietze and Jonny on the journey of learning how to get safe for each other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I don't think, I mean, even in that process, like, you just lose yourself as you become an adult.
Yeah.
A lot of times, like the hardship of life just
Especially
beats
when
it
you
out
start
of you.
raising kids, like,
Yeah. Or if you
or you
have
go
marriage
through stuff,
problems,
it just beats it out
Yeah.
of you. You know?
I mean,
And I
we have
think-
kids, and life beat the shit out of us too. I think it just can happen.
You said
It
we
just-
had
I
kids?
did.
Yeah, I was like, what? What did you
Time out,
say?
did you
right
guys
now?
have
We
kids?
don't have
They have kids. I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know about these kids. What happened to them?
Just
locked
like,
in the
this is
basement.
crazy.
I think it's interesting as a side note because a lot of couples will be engaging in the relationship and maybe the sex is good, and then all of a sudden they're like, I don't know what's wrong with us, like we just don't have a good sex life, and they don't actually realize, like you were talking earlier about the idea that the relationship, it was almost like it just happened for us and then it didn't. We weren't actually being deliberate, and what you realize is like couples will oftentimes feel like they're just fading away and that things aren't working out because they didn't know that there's actually something that you needed to foster and facilitate
and care for. Yeah.
Well, I think normally people go to like the Kama Sutra or like, you know what I mean? They try to fix the problem through logical, practical
External things.
like,
Right.
oh, we got to
Right.
spice it up. We got to figure. And it has nothing to do with that. It has
Right.
everything to do with
Well,
heart connection.
I will say both things are helpful because I think even in
Yeah.
Pietze's story of her sexuality opening up in this season, part of it was heart connect and then part of it was exploring in her sexuality. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, totally.
I think you can do one without the other,
Yes.
but you can't do the other without the first. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the
that's true.
emotional connection.
you have to have the emotional connection,
At some
and that's
point,
even
yeah.
what it
Mhm.
made it safe for me to
Yep.
explore a little bit more because
Yes.
I felt safe emotionally.
Yeah.
But had I done it without the emotional, I just would have gone into performance.
I will
you
say
know?
it was a lot easier before you started getting migraines from alcohol. But
Yeah. In the middle of us having a hard time, we went to Mexico, and the day we showed up at Mexico, I was PMSing, and I was like, "Can we just do this like a friend vacation?
and I'm like, honey,
Like,
here's some tequila.
we don't have to have sex on this vacation." And Johnny's like, "Oh heck no!" And so he like literally every second I turned around, there was a tequila shot. The whole vacation.
and we had a great time.
I don't remember any of it. But I think like it got really, really rough. And then obviously that was like
it got so rough.
it got so rough. And we never went long spurts without having sex, but it was pretty much like we actually stayed committed to making ourselves have sex like somewhat often.
Yeah, like once or twice a week.
Not like duty. It was like, we know this is good.
Good for
Yeah,
us.
we
and
had a
good for our
value, and we
bonding
always
process.
have.
We don't want to
Mhm.
lose that.
Even
It
in the midst of
was-
hardship, we were like,
it was
this
a-
is actually important.
Yeah.
It was a little like duty at times.
But it was
It-
a little like
it
duty
was-
at times.
yeah.
Literally duty. But and I think at times just very boring. Like
Yes,
just
very
okay, let's do
boring.
this. We're
Like
doing it for the
routine.
sake of
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm
Yes.
still glad we had
Yeah,
that value.
yeah.
I think it kept us together at times when there was nothing really holding us together.
Hmm.
But then obviously working through all of our stuff, us hitting a huge breaking point and then getting emotionally healthy, which, going through Pathway to Freedom, doing that, all of that stuff is kind of what got us started on the journey of really repairing our marriage and creating emotional safety. And after that, and we talk about this like a few episodes back where we share the story of like repairing, but we had that moment in Vegas, the shower moment, as like a few people have DM'd me about the shower moment.
Mhm.
And where Jonny shared that dream with me, and it just clicked for me. Something in me clicked towards him in vulnerability and in like taking ownership for some things where I've created unsafety. But that was really it. And then since then, like since that moment, something clicked in me where it was just like hitting that level of emotional safety, like opened me up sexually. And I was telling Jonny earlier, it was like, you know, an interesting component to this is like two things. I think the first thing being that had we not, you know, our marriage was such a mess and there was so much pain. There was just a chasm of pain between us.
Oh, yeah.
And in some ways, it could at times feel like, man, have we just like ruined everything, including like our sex life? But on the other side of this, since like getting the tools, since cleaning our marriage out, since creating emotional safety, what I've realized is you clean out that chasm of pain and it gets filled up with love and intimacy. And so the depth to which we've experienced pain and disconnect in our relationship and in our sex life even is the depth to which now I'm experiencing, or we're both experiencing even more intimacy and love, like a depth we would have never had we not gone through the hardship.
Right.
You know, because it I don't know, it just fosters a level, you get to a level of vulnerability and safety on the other side that it was too surface before.
Right.
You know?
Well, I think sex is more important on a connection heart level than most of us actually think.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's actually very crucial when you're married, when you're living life with your primary attachment. Like, having good sex is not, it's not like a bonus benefit. You know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of times we think of it as the dessert after the meal. Like, oh, it's great to have good sex. Like, and, you know, we want to have good sex. But I think as we've turned the corner into emotional safety and we've worked through so much of the garbage of our past, it's like, this is almost like a missing component. You know, like we'll even have sex like after a big fight sometimes, but not in a bad way, in a way that like reconnects us. Like, I actually think that sex is more crucial than most people in marriages
Realize,
but it
Right,
has
'cause-
nothing to do with the physical aspect of it. It has to do with how your hearts connect to each other.
Right. And if you're disconnected, that doesn't, if you're emotionally disconnected, that doesn't make sense, I think, for a lot of people. Like, if they haven't had emotional connection inside of the relationship at all, it's like, I couldn't, you know, it is just sex to them. It is just a physical act. And until you've, you know, pulled down some barriers in your own heart to get in, you know, vulnerable with yourself and vulnerable with your spouse, you don't realize the depth of that. And then once you do get to that vulnerable place, you're like, oh yeah, this is about this physical experience is helping to facilitate emotional intimacy when I let my walls down.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think even in the context for those who are in the church, you know, that verse that talks about the two becoming one flesh, like, there is something that's missing when your hearts are not connected in sex. That was the original intent of sex. The original intent was this moment in time where, like, it's healing and it's connected and it's strengthening you. And it's all of these things where, like, two people really are actually like one person, and it has nothing to do with the physical aspect of it.
Right.
But, you know, I think it's kind of pushed to the side and just like, oh, this is just sex. Like, it's not.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, we're not taught that. Culture doesn't necessarily show
it doesn't.
that deep emotional connection. Do you guys want to give some practical stories or examples of like what happened that helped change your sex life, or what it even means, what it looks like now, what, like, some practical part of that?
Yeah. Well, I think a few things. One, us healing the pain in our marriage, the chasm of pain between us, cleaning that out, was the number one thing. We had to clean out the pain.
Yeah.
You know,
tell me, how long do you think that process took? A couple years.
3 years, maybe.
I
2
think
years?
3 really intense years, but
2 or 3
9
years.
off and on. You know,
Yeah.
Totally.
9 years
Totally.
of off and on trying it, not
Right.
going well,
Right.
doing a little tiny bit, little baby steps,
Yeah.
and then 3 years of like
Really
fire getting turned
intentionally.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
And I would
And-
say, I mean, not to plug the course.
Yeah.
But I think that the biggest thing in all of it, because, oh gosh, Pietze's always been very connected to how she feels.
Yeah.
Very
If we're
good at
being
articulating
honest.
it.
I have not,
Right.
and so I think the biggest component of all of this is me not only being able to connect to myself, but then in that, when I wasn't able to connect to myself, I wasn't able to connect to her pain either.
Yeah.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because I was just shut down in general. So I think the biggest component of all of this was me learning how to connect to myself, and then me being able to connect to the pain that she had with me in a way that actually healed things. Because
Well-
prior to that, it was just me being shut down and me like trying to survive every argument and trying
Right.
to just make it through.
Yeah. And empathy and understanding each other is what makes it so you feel not alone. And that's what builds the bridge, is when you feel like somebody really sees you and sees your heart and can understand why you're at where you're at, or why you're reacting the way you're reacting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do think that healing that pain inside of me allowed me to actually be in my body.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't preoccupied with pain. So like when we go to have sex, I think I couldn't get my body and my mind and my spirit to like connect with him, because I think there was too much pain between us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think cleaning that out inside of me actually helped me to stop dissociating in sex
Mm-hmm.
and actually be in my body, to where honestly, something that changed for me this year, well, it's kind of been building the last 3 years since we've been working through stuff, is like I am having different physical sensations in my body than I've ever had.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been able to orgasm just by having sex.
Mm-hmm.
And I was never able to do that before.
Right.
And like have the craziest orgasms I've ever had, because I'm fully in my body.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I'm fully connected to him.
Mhm.
And now it's become healing for me.
Yeah.
When we have sex. And I actually think for you too, because
Well, like now, sometimes you'll have sex when you're stressed or when you're in pain, because it feels like comfort to you.
oh, totally. 100%. And as well, like I used to, like I always had a value for loving Jonny sexually
Yeah.
and serving him sexually, like as being a good partner
Mm-hmm.
in marriage. But it never, like I said, I was never in it. It never really turned me on. I just was doing it because I love him. And something
Well,
flipped in me.
For people to give context, it turned you on a little bit. Like you weren't like completely numb.
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't like
horrible.
We had a lot of fun. It
Yeah.
wasn't horrible. It wasn't
Yeah.
like I don't want to do this.
Totally.
But it wasn't like,
This is
you know,
amazing.
yeah, and it was hard for me to keep my mind there. I would
Focus.
dissociate a lot of times. I kind of let
Mhm.
my mind wander. It wasn't like, but go ahead. Did you?
Well,
want
and
to say something?
I think a big component of this, and I have, oddly enough, I have so many clients who are struggling with this very same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the biggest components of it is actually accepting your life, accepting your spouse, accepting that this is what it is,
Mm-hmm.
and then being
Right.
a student of them and figuring them out and understanding the things that turn them off, understanding the things that make them have anxiety, and then working within the context of that. But you know what plays a huge role in pushing you away from that is porn.
Yeah.
Because
You don't try to
It's
understand
this-
your spouse anymore.
it's this expectation you're living, and it's funny because it's kind of like the grief process a little bit, where you just say, this is my life, this
I have
is
to
what my life
accept
is,
this.
I'm okay with this,
Mhm.
I'm okay with the limitations that I'm in. And that's where porn plays such a destructive role, is because you have this fantasy world
Right.
that you're thinking sex should be like this
Mhm.
and sex should be like that, and all these things, rather than accepting the fact
Amplifying dissatisfaction within that.
that I
space.
have a wife who doesn't ever want to have sex unless the windows are all closed and the lights are dim and things are, really private, Like, and that's not a bad thing, but I'm saying when you're living in this fantasy world,
Yeah.
you have all of these other things that you go to, like, I want this, or I want that, or I want whatever, rather than saying, no, I'm going to be a student of my spouse.
Yeah.
I'm going to learn what works for them. I'm going to learn what doesn't work for them. I am going to be content within the confines of what I've chosen into and make this the best thing possible. I mean,
Yeah.
and obviously this example is used all the time, but sex really is like a garden, like within marriage. Like, you have to tend to it.
Yeah.
You have to know it. You have to know the seasons. You have to know how to care for it, what things to get rid of. And so, I think that porn in this context is so destructive because it causes you to live in a fantasy world. Whereas, like you were saying, like,
Well, look, what you're actually saying is porn keeps you from accepting where you're at
and being present
and being present.
and loving
It
your
keeps
spouse in the
you-
way that they need to be loved.
Yes. And one of the things is, we're not saying just settle for whatever your sex life is. What they're both in the heart posture of choosing into each
Yeah.
other. And so
Yeah.
it's acceptance of each other and growing what is, instead of using a fantasy to disconnect
Yes,
from
absolutely.
what is good. And I think
Yeah.
I think a lot of people use fantasy to dissociate, girls and guys, whether it's
Oh,
porn
yeah.
or just the fantasy of someone else or whatever it is, to avoid our pain. But mostly when we
Yes.
just face our pain, face our life, things change. And what I loved is, Pietze, you were sharing, you could have tried for years to just get yourself to feel differently, but you
Right.
can't. What you did instead was you removed the block. So I think that our most authentic self, when we are healthy and connected to ourselves, our sexuality flows freely. I think that that's
Yes.
just the truest form.
Yes.
Now, I think a lot of us have a lot of blocks from pain that we've gone through, from experiences, from beliefs, from events. And so we have things that can block the flow of sexuality in our lives. I think
Yes.
everybody has. And so part of the goal is getting back connected to yourself so you can step into that, so you can engage that flow so that you don't have like dams and
Yeah.
things that block it.
Yeah. Well, and that's exactly what I think happened, because as we began to heal, I think something in me clicked, because then sex started to become not just like better, but a healing experience
Yes.
for me.
Yes.
Like, really, for both of us, like, honestly, it was like healing us,
Oh,
you
it's
know?
so healing for me.
So healing. And
What
he was
about
pulling
it?
up
How did that happen, or why is that?
it's because of that, cleaning out that chasm of pain, both of us showing up fully present in ourselves, giving to the other person, like, has been the most mind-blowing, intimate connection I have ever experienced in my entire life. Like, not knowing that you could experience that much sensual, like, intimacy and safety with another human being, and vulnerability that way.
Yeah.
Both
I
of us
think-
showing up in our vulnerability together. Like,
Yeah, I think for me, I made a decision. I actually remember making a conscious decision in that conversation that we had in Vegas of just being like, I have never been vulnerable. I've never been vulnerable. It's been 15 years.
Wow.
And I've never actually been sexually vulnerable.
And
so
let your
I'm
guards
just, and
down.
so I'm just going to do it. And obviously I wouldn't have known that had I not gotten connected to myself and
Right.
gone through the emotional journey of knowing myself. But where I was just like, hey, I just want you to know that, like, when you do these things for me, it's not about the act. It's about the way that my heart feels valued by you. You know, like when you give me a hand job, or when, like when you do things for me, it's not about me fulfilling some fantasy. It's about the fact that
Like you're
when you
feeling
do that,
cared
it
for.
speaks to me that I am a man and you see the good in me and you care for who I am. You know, and so like that's kind of how that conversation went, and it led to
you
really good
being that
things. And I think I
vulnerable-
cried, of course, you know,
And
which
you
is
being that vulnerable with me and showing up vulnerably and like allowing me to take care of you. Like, because I think it wasn't just that you, like, because I would do those things, but I don't think you let yourself be
Well, I just
vulnerable
felt
to me
guilty.
in it.
Yeah.
Or
You would
let
just feel
yourself
guilty.
receive
Like
them.
let yourself actually
Yeah.
receive. And sex is so much about letting down your guard
yes,
and surrendering to receiving or to the passion or to the moment.
yes,
Yeah. And I think when he did that, like it flipped something in me where I was like, it, like him letting me give to him, like in that vulnerable way, like it changed something inside of me. And
Right.
so then from there, I think honestly, like I read something in me flipped and I was like, heck no, like I want to love sex. And I think also something in me flipped as a person. I'm like, I've been a mom, I've been in the gutter, but like I'm getting my life back.
I want to have sexuality again. I want to
wanna
be
have
more
sexuality
than just
again.
this worker bee mom.
Yeah, where I'm like, just have the mom hat all on. I'm like, no, I want to get who I am back. And I took a sex course. I read a book. I learned about basically the brake and the accelerator and what, like some people have a high accelerator and they can get turned on really easily and go really fast. Some people have a really sensitive brake. I'm more of a sensitive brake. Like I can easily get turned off.
Right.
And so learning that about myself, learning about what
that
actually
one's fun to navigate.
we're like in it, and I'm done. He's like, what the heck? But learning that about myself, learning about what creates even physical safety for me, like privacy is a big deal for me. If I feel private, thanks for walking in on us, by the way, Abby. If I feel private, then I actually like do
Let
way.
go
I
more.
show
You
up.
surrender
I
more.
let go more. I surrender. And so like learning that practically about myself actually helped a ton because I started actually going like, no, I'm going to like, I want to show up here. I want to do well here. And like just educating myself in a deeper way, like really helped a ton.
I love that.
That's cool.
Did you have something you want to say,
Which
Johnny?
I want to add this real quick. I think a lot of people find themselves feeling powerless within the context of sexuality, powerless within sexuality, especially in these committed relationships. And something that you were just like pointing out is like, I became powerful. I decided what I wanted. I decided that I was going to find solutions, find answers, change the way that I approach this entire thing. Like you're not just stuck having these experiences happen to you. You can be listening to Jonny and Pietze talking right now and be like, you know, I relate with a lot of the places where they were shut down or disconnected or couldn't get to that. Well, it doesn't have to be that way. It's like, it's not just like unique that this is just like somehow they got lucky and their life changed and things suddenly got better. No, they did something about it. They did something about it at a heart level and they did something about it even at a practical level where Pietze was like, I'm going to read books. I'm going to do these things to engage this specific part of my sexuality. Then there was a specific part of their emotions that they decided to get up and not let life happen to them. Too many of us are living lifestyles where we're allowing life to just happen to us and we're really dissatisfied with it. So you can continue to live this continual dissatisfied life about your relationships, your intimacy, your sexuality. You can be like, well, I'm going to take the wheel to the car of my life and I'm going to begin to steer it.
Yeah. And I will say now, like I show up completely differently in our sex life. And honestly, like right after that, in the middle of that, like we had a sex session where I made it completely about Jonny and I took charge of the time and I was doing all kinds of things that I've always done, but I was fully in it, fully engaged.
Like you liked it.
I liked it. I was having so much fun. I was having so much fun driving him crazy. And we got done and he was like, he was like, oh my gosh. Like the whole time during it, he was like freaking out, like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like, what is happening? And we got done and he's like, oh my gosh, are you okay? How do you feel? And I'm like, I feel like an effing queen. I feel like such a boss. Like, I feel so powerful. I feel so like
alive.
I feel so alive. I feel so amazing. Like, I feel like a different person, you know? And so it really like built, but what I want to say in that is that Jonny had to let go of porn. He had to let go of what he wanted our sex life to be and accept it in the hardest season. Choose to like just accept it for what it is. Like when he gave up porn, it was in our hardest season where we were barely having sex and it was really hard. And now like that we've worked through so much of healing everything, like he says to me all the time, he's like, I am so thankful that I got to experience sex like that. It's like the type of sex like I've always dreamed of having and didn't think I'd ever get to have, you know? And I just love that, like, I love that, like walking the road and doing the due diligence, him working on himself, me working on myself has like led to that, you know?
Here's the thing that I think is so interesting though, right? Because, there's not a quick fix. And I think when people want a quick fix, obviously we all want out of the pain that we're in. I get that. Like I want something instantly all of the time about anything I'm working on. I'm like, I want to have pleasure. I don't want to be in pain. But I was thinking about, you know, like the course. I love our course. I think our course is great. It changes people's lives, but it took 3 years of practicing that content over and over and over and over again for you guys to see this level of result. It's Pietze always says consistency compounds, and this is what our whole thing is about. Like I've seen so many. One sexual partner is just frustrated with where the other one is at, and they don't have the patience to go on the journey of surrendering to what is and then finding out how to love and engage and water the garden and wait for the seeds to actually break open and wait for the, like, it does take time. And I think we get so frustrated at what isn't that we can forget to have vision. And one of the things I'm thinking of as we're having this conversation is getting renewed vision, whether you're single and you're just like, okay, it's good to know sex is different in different seasons, but we can always be powerful to gain connection and have health and enjoy sex. I think it's good for singles to know that. If you're married, it's so important to have vision. Hey, whatever our sex life is, it can be better and it can take time, and it doesn't mean that everything's wrong. And we're not like, one of the things I love about how you guys share is you don't share with blame. You're not like, well, she didn't do this and he didn't do this. And so that's why we're at, there's this acknowledgement of your own part that you have been working on and realizing it together. And I think for couples out there listening who have issues with sexuality, if you can learn to be connected to yourself and learn safe attachment, your sex life will eventually transform.
I want to add something here to this. So there's a lot of people who you're listening to this and you're single, maybe you're participating in a hookup culture and you're having a lot of sex outside of a place of commitment, a covenant, a long-term covenant relationship. And that's cool. Like you can keep doing that, but there's an experience of sexuality and intimacy that you will never be able to access in that lifestyle. You just won't, because it's something about the experiences that we share, the longevity when someone goes long term, and fighting deliberately. Because I know people who were stuck in marriages, like they're stuck because they're living powerless inside of marriages, and it's just like our sex life was always garbage. Yeah, because you weren't going on the healing process. But I'm saying when you purposely step into a committed relationship and you say, I'm in this for the long term, I'm in for developing myself My partner's in for developing themselves, and we're in for the long haul of working through the fiery points inside of this emotionally and sexually. What you develop is encounters and experiences. Like, I can tell people this and they go, oh, okay, I guess. You just don't get it until you've done it. And so there's even people who are listening who are going, yeah, well, I've been in the committed relationship and we don't have that awesome stuff. And what you might be hearing right now is like, oh, I may need to awaken to the parts of myself where I haven't deliberately been showing up powerfully. And that's going to be a component that's going to be necessary for me having these other deep, intimate encounters physically and emotionally that I've never had.
And one of the things that I think is important, I know that we have to wrap up. We could talk about sex forever.
Right.
But one of the things that I think is important is both of you have mentioned that choosing vulnerability.
Yep.
Yeah.
Is a huge, and this is, so Jonny earlier said, I think sex is more important in a relationship than a lot of people realize. And I think so too. I think sex is a check engine light. It lets you know how safe you feel with each other.
Yeah, it's a barometer.
It's a barometer. It tells you, it's a temperature gauge. Do we feel safe? Are we communicating well? And I also love that typically one person in the relationship has a higher sex drive than the other. And that typically keeps the healthiness of that is that it keeps a focus instead of just like slowly growing apart, because like if one person is still wanting it, there's like this thing of like, oh, we need to figure out what our connection issues are.
Right.
We need to know that. And so it's a beautiful, beautiful gift, but vulnerability and connection and emotional safety allows us to let go of all of the protectors in our head, allows us to let go of dissociating, and being present in our bodies enables you to experience pleasure in your body in a way that you never have. Even what Pietze was saying, that she feels pleasure differently. If you're dissociated, you don't know what's going on in your body. And both me and Justin have had to work to get back in our bodies. I think you've had to work to get back in your body.
Yeah.
It's not something I was taught as a kid, how to be present in my body.
Present in your body. Yeah.
But there is a lack of pleasure you can feel if you're not present in your body.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you guys have any closing thoughts that you guys want to share?
I mean, I think just be vulnerable. I think that's the, and that goes beyond just sex. But I would encourage any of you, and this is not just specific to the course, but whether you do the course or not, you got to figure out what's going on inside of you. And if you're in a committed relationship, communicate that vulnerably.
Yeah.
Like, life is too short.
Yeah.
Life is way too short to put on a good face and try to pretend that you're something that you're not, you know? And so, I mean, if you're able to do the course, I think it's really helpful for you to identify what's going on inside and communicate that with others. But even if you're not, like if you're in marriage and you're wanting to have better sex, start with vulnerability. Start with just being soft. Just be who the real you is on the inside.
Yeah.
Also, if you struggle with porn, this is a good course to start. Me and Pietze did a segment on addiction specifically for that. But the whole course is what I lead my clients who struggle with porn in, which is learning how to know what's going on inside of you and figure out the you part instead of running to the relief.
Yeah. And mine kind of segues into the course as well. And it's one thing that I did that was really helpful. And it's one thing that Jonny and I encourage like the couples that we work with, where to start. And it's just, don't push past triggers that come up in sex. Pause and engage them. And then communicate through them. And part of that is learning the stuff that we teach in the course, learning how to identify those triggers, learning how to get to the fear and the vulnerability underneath. But, you know, the biggest thing is like when I dissociated, I had to pause and go, Jonny, go, you're not in it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm struggling. And we would just pause and I would get connected with myself. I'd figure out what was coming up. And we talk through it rather than pushing through it. Because if I pushed through it, I was just reinforcing dissociation and disconnection. But actually pausing allowed my heart to go on the journey. allowed my heart to stay connected, because heart connected sex is the best.
Yep.
Is the best sex
It's
you
what
can have.
sex was created to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so allowing your heart to go on the journey is a messy and slow process.
Yeah.
And it can
Slow.
be tedious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a slow process. It's slow to, you have to let the triggers come up. And we tell couples all the time, if a trigger comes up, like if the woman starts to dissociate or the man suddenly starts to lose his erection because something, it's usually because like something emotional has triggered, and you have to figure out what 9 times out of 10, even ED most of the time is not a physical issue. It's an emotional issue most of the time, you know? And so pausing and figuring out what is coming up inside of you is the place to start, and communicating it vulnerably with your spouse in that moment. Praying if you need to pray, just holding each other, taking sex off the table, and just say it's about emotional connection and intimacy. And if we don't have sex, that's okay.
Yeah,
you know,
so good.
And play the long game. Play the long game.
Yes. Yeah, play the long game.
Play the long game.
Yep.
Like,
it takes time.
It takes time. It takes investment.
Be patient. Be gracious.
It takes work. Yep.
Humble.
And it's
Take
kind of
the expectation off each other.
It's kind of counterintuitive. Like, I'm thinking about if I was in a marriage and I really wanted sex and I felt like my partner wasn't doing it, it's counterintuitive to choose to figure out how to meet their emotional needs when I'm not getting the sexual need met that I want. It's counterintuitive to be vulnerable when I feel like I'm not getting the nurture that I want. It's counterintuitive to keep showing up with love and to learn your partner when you're feeling like your needs aren't getting met. But often the fastest way to get the result we want is counterintuitive to our protectors.
100%.
It's so good. You guys, I love that we got to have you on here and have some good laughter up front and share banter and stuff like that. I just want to just wrap it with this saying, like, hey, you guys out there who are listening, really big deal to share these episodes. As you share these episodes, there are people that are struggling inside of the sexual arena, and they want freedom. They just don't know how to get there. And so when you hear it, like,
and nobody's
spread it to your
talking
friends,
about
because
it.
nobody's talking about it in healthy ways. It's there's a lot of destructive information about sexuality out there that just exacerbates really difficult situations. So take time, share this with the people that you care about. And even if they're not in the middle, they're not a person who's currently in sexual relationships, but they're gonna at some point, it's good to start hearing these conversations so that they can reflect back on it and be like, oh, okay, how do I want to build my relationship in the future? What do I want my sex life to look like? So with all that said, again, I really love the both of you. I'm glad that you've joined us here today. For those of you listening, you can go to Justin and Abi, that's abi.com, and you can go ahead and go to our courses page if you want to check out the Pathway to Freedom. Again, you have a few days left to sign up for that, and we're going to have a great another 10 weeks going through that course together.
Oh yeah, and me and Pietze, okay, the immersion program this year, I'm very excited about. Jonny and Justin will be leading some sessions. Me and
we're bringing the
Pietze,
testosterone.
Yeah, we're bringing the big guns. Me and Pietze will be leading sessions. We'll be teaching extra content about creating safety and repair and attachment alongside of the course this year. So we feel really excited. There's a lot of bonus content for the immersion program.
There you go. So everybody, hey, we love you all. Rate, review, subscribe, and share.
Woo woo.